Amid all this ferment and more, Boccaccio, Petrarch, and their friends found themselves in the Republic of Florence, famous for its history of almost democratic self-governance, creating new kinds of poetry. In particular, they wrote little poem songs or sonnets. Sonnets. Why were people speaking in poetry to one another in Florence just before the Quattrocento? Above all, short poems written not in Latin but in Italian dialect meant courtly love, the kind of love affair that was carried on, for example, in the palace of an emperor. In this case, the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II, who had held court in Sicily during the 1200s. The emperor's court was full of opportunities for young people to sing, dance, have fun, and express themselves in graceful artistic writing as they fell in love. And Sicily was a perfect storm for sonnets. Smack in the middle of Europe and Africa, mediator to beautiful Arabic and Latin love song and poetry traditions of the learned, well-educated classes. Sicily was a crossroads. Arabic poetry in traditional forms and new ones, like the muwashahat or girdle poems, with specific rhyme schemes and musical settings, were being enthusiastically written and performed. Topics included love, friendship, and praise of the current emperor. The Norman rulers also introduced German and French bardic poetic traditions, and Jewish poets are writing in the Hebrew Andalusian style as well. For instance, Anatoly ben Yosef, 1150 to 1215. The result of this courtly meeting of the poets was the birth of the sonnet in 12th to 13th century Italy. With the position of Sicily and the rulership by the Spanish kings over southern Italy, including the Kingdom of Naples and parts of Tuscany, where Florence is situated, it's no surprise that the form then spread to Florence, where it was picked up a century later by Boccaccio, Petrarch, and friends. For the Florentines, who lived in a commune that called itself a free republic, there could be no real praise of the emperor. There was no emperor. So the element of the sonnets dealing with love became most prominent, and Petrarch in particular took up the form. He was well educated in and excited by the Sicilian sonnets, but also, of course, by the ancient Greek and Latin love poems, such as those by Ovid and Petrarchan, that he, Boccaccio, and friends were now freshly studying and enjoying outside of church. The emphasis on love was extreme in this kind of poetry. Plutarch and his friends don't seem to even care if the love affairs they're writing so heatedly about are real. As in rock or pop songs about love, the story may ring true for many listeners, but that doesn't mean the singer actually experienced it. Just because Under the Boardwalk talks in the first person about my baby doesn't mean the composers of it had a particular baby in mind. And when Lionel Richie sings Lady, there was no need for him to have his own special person be referenced, although she might have been an inspiration. Petrarch sings his sonnets to a woman named Laura, whom he had seen once, at a distance. Although he didn't really know her well at all, he wrote endless love poems to and about her, and even continued his love poetry torrent after she died young. Basically, he was creating his own fictional persona, a love poet who was in love with Laura. We don't know how she felt about this, but she wasn't alone. When the Sicilian poet's sonnet form was taken up by Petrarch and his friends in their Tuscan dialect of Italian in the Republic of Florence, they emphasized the love affairs, real and fictional, above all. Falling in love with a beautiful woman had been seen since Dante's Divine Comedy as a way of approaching God. In Dante's case, his love of the woman Beatrice was celebrated in his epic poem about attaining heaven. So Christian poets had a good excuse for writing about love, but a less God-focused passion for writing and giving these small poems as gifts was also trending in Florence now. Poems were written to accompany a gift of wine or cheese. There were birthday poems, poems to ask a favor, poems of sorrow for the loss of a loved one, poems about nature's beauty, poems about your friend's pets, poems in praise of your patron or your friends, poems about jealousy, poems about war and peace. Almost all secular topics were acceptable. The sonnet had been freed from the emperor's court to take flight all over Italy and beyond, even into Shakespeare's England, where Shakespeare thought that his skill in sonnet writing would make him immortal, not his plays. All right, have you ever written a Petrarchan sonnet? If you'd like to try, the rules in English are the following. 1. There are 14 lines. That's it, nice and short. 2. Each line is a pentameter, a 5-accent line in iambic rhythm. Du-dun, 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 du-dun. The lines rhyme at the end in the following way. This is number 3. A, B, B, A, B, B, A. That is, the first, fourth, fifth, and eighth lines rhyme at the end. So do the second, third, sixth, and seventh lines, with a rhyme that's different from the first one. C, D, C, D, C, D. Or sometimes C, D, E, or C, D, C. Basically, every other line rhymes, different from the previous rhymes, in the last 6 lines. There are a couple of different options for this section. Here's a modern example. Elizabeth Barrett Browning, one of her most famous poems from Sonnets from the Portuguese. See if you can follow as the first 8 lines have ending rhymes in the sound A's and ite. The last 6 have rhymes in oo's and f. Some of the rhymes are not exact. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and height my soul can reach when feeling out of sight for the ends of being and ideal grace. I love thee to the level of every day's most quiet need by sun and candlelight. I love thee freely as men strive for right. I love thee purely as they turn from praise. I love thee with a passion put to use in my old griefs and with my childhood's faith. I love thee with a love I seemed to lose with my lost saints. I love thee with the breath, smiles, tears of all my life, and if God choose, I shall but love thee better after death. So that's all there is to it. Get writing.